KRM, Beach Office Private Living, 55021, city number 22. We will continue the effort that you are doing. It's an independent effort as you could have since at least 2014. We had no local support, and indeed we never had. It's an anti-crime effort, and it's based on the economic control and will impact straightly the systemic crime that goes integrated inside the institution that are unable to have the accomplishment by law and put criminal offenders out. We had this idea quite simple. The root cause is corruption in an institutional level, segmented in public or corporate, sometimes public international if come in Brazil, or national if it is something going as Brazil. In the same way, the segment can be corporate, national, or international. In all cases, we will have buildings, we will have the individualization by chairs, the action going by abuses, and the wrongdoing will suddenly be changed into crimes. And the delinquents, I would say, in an institutional level as criminal behavior is always organized with hierarchical distribution, and we have the continuity and progression from local until the international by threats, crossing the limits as guarantees and basic rights or civil rights of individuals, companies, or diffuse purpose and interests like consuming peace. Violation of rights, basic rights, civil rights, guarantees, and elements of your profession in the duty that you are having or presenting along with the international community during a very specific period, which was the warfare. Advised 2 years ago in my private living Rio de Janeiro, considering that this Twitter was launched, I would say, and the International Criminal Court and others were attached on it. The silence can be a crime when one of the elements of the accusation presented and supporting the FBI and the IOM, the independent oversight mechanism on the International Criminal Court, is the blind eye association to keep the abuses, to keep the violations, to keep the continuity of illicit gains in a macro distribution from global or globalism until cross the line and have the association with local crime, interconnection by international systems like finances and economy or even communication. You have the transnational organized crime. And in Brazil, you have a law about this. Of course, that you always have the public corruption, its effect on pandemic, even aiming to provide anything by stimulus. We will have on mind that in the 80s and the 90s, the organized crime in a transcontinental level was led by the laundry, which is the premise as all activities. And this comes since from the 50s with Luciano and Al Capone on Chicago, and nowadays we have the cybercrime argument presented by Mr. Jürgen Stock on Interpol as the basis or the bottom of transnational organized crime by nature, but considering that the combination and the continuity put ourselves into the Fintech. And the Fintech going as the transference of financial stimulus by the digital environment, considering that we have payments made at the cyberspace. If you have fake data on public departments, of course that you, for instance, will be unable to audit, present, or identify the not equal or not proper equality as distribution of wealth and economic notation, and the Gini as coefficient that we have will be something that has no use. In the same way, the Phillips curve with the entire economical theory, and this will impact other areas as science, as the medicine, when you can't have the statement properly because you had violation of civil rights, and this will for sure indicate crimes committed and crimes against mankind. It's a problem that you have. Solution offered was a database signal, and I suffered so much aggression that an extended portfolio, I would say, was, an industrial portfolio for self-defense. And we'll check that we have this situation here, and we will consider that we have two lines. As my line as finances, my line as cyber or IT. Combination of two both give the fintech. The fintech will present distortions that will be evidenced or tracked in a very first moment by the cyber space as distortion, and of course that will give levels inside the financial system to both international. If I have, for instance, the increasement of fintech crimes, I will have maybe an increasement of density by crossed argument as cyber, which is a deeper level, as frauds, violations, or continued by public corruption considering the modified data to keep the, the increasement as major purpose at this area. And we will check that indeed this will expose the continuity of this curve for this side here, which is inside, I would say something like this, and will be crossed here. We will have this situation here as an exponential behavior inside my linear notation by the association with a third vector here. So, these, of course, that will be evidenced by the digital payments. When you have the increasement change a single number by all things observed based on cyber frauds and cyber crimes committed from public department by modification of data by payment. And we will put this in a linear perception considering that we have a higher level here as distortion. This area here indeed is the area that do not allow to match one more time the capacity of do payments and the operations to have the laundering scam by fintech crimes and have a buffering. This buffering allowed us, for instance, to have the research and track an entire area as a tiny small siege on one specific area with integrated failure by continuity of all things, and we will present this in the way we are having with the OR Society UK. We will have the crossing elements with lines and columns at this matrix here. For instance, the contracts to rent a house or something in a very specific period, and we have the peers on it, and the money is spent to do this. The crossing element between the contracts and the money spent will give me one specific notation. We will have another situation here, which is at the same period. For instance, Carnival on Rio de Janeiro, it implies 25 February 2022 until March day 2 2022. We have in general, when you do the request to install a system, you have the machine with nothing, the request, then you have something filled here by a cluster or a cloud that transfer this information to you, have your machine filled, and this give as feedback to the cloud the information about the machine and all things. This can be at the Microsoft Windows as installation of system, can be at your Android. And when you have remote access in a clandestine way, interrupting this to install entire platform as communication, in general using the Intel by mobile, and having this at your Windows, and in your Android sometimes using your Google account. It means that your first interest is have the corruption at the structure of this system, which points to the communication service. And we have frauds at the Fintech. And in general, you do modify data to scapegoat things and have the continuity by things scapegoated and justify the reasons to do not have the dismissing procedure. Maybe you are under international trial, jurisdiction, investigation, and prosecution. Then we will check that we suggested to have a procedure. For instance, if you have the duplicity or multiplicity as system installed by partitions and volumes in your hard disk, of course that will have a conflict if you, for instance, install and have fresh start by the login using your account at Microsoft, for instance. And then we have the loop, and this loop will put we will not recognize one more time the login, because it's something kind of exclusive. In the same way, when you do the violation of an exclusive service at your mobile as provided, and you have anyone logged at your account doing all things, and the system as cloud, for instance, the Microsoft can collect this kind of information, such a pattern. This pattern will evidence at the period 25 February 2022 until March day 2 2022. It means that we have the area, the installation of system considering the Windows and the Android, and as system. And you will have, guess what, the location doing this at this period. One more time, we will have the installation of a system and the locals doing these kind of things. And if we can cross, for instance, the local area with contracts and money, maybe we will have the Fintech. This is made or was made or is indeed going at maybe the UK Operational Research Society. We indeed don't have, for instance, this as something mandatory as a need to prove facts, which indeed goes under notoriety as circumstance. And with other elements, considering the Ernest Young as backup and support to have an investment in a sports entity, considering all things exposed. But this is, the surprise for today. And the new tracer, as you can observe, will be used like this. The installation, I will uninstall, or I will enable, then I will have the disable, and this flow and reversal flow must have the same pattern. If I have an interruption, I can track this. For instance, observe that your primary interest to escape thing goes against an innocent person, company, or government by the clandestine level of communication implies the loss of integrity in an area that goes as communication platform inside your system, but the violation of the system as consequence of violation of a privacy, which has a premise the corruption and continued by nepotism, indeed is the object of the accusation, full valid in an international criminal court, and we are acting observing the warfare advised in 2018 and the premise one more time as blind association. We will avoid for sure an uncomfortable situation. The level as criminal behavior, you know, which implies the public corruption on it go inside the criminal area. It means that it's a failure inside an area that has an integrity as failed, I would say. They do plea bargains to keep their office, their chairs, their unfair privilege, and then we have the decreasement of capacity to the failed areas do things as a failed thing, and then they will do the plea bargain in the same way. And then we are having here one situation on economy named identity. Both are guilty. Have a nice night. If it's necessary, we move on, but they think that's not necessary. Federal Prison America, Ohio suggested by the kickoff as observation looks like as this kind of violation 6 up to 20 considering industrial crime.